Well, who do we have here? I can't see you, but I'm pretty sure that I know you. I know that you are either a kid or you're a grown-up. And I know that you either live here in Nova Scotia where I live, or you're from somewhere else in the world entirely. And I know that you are unique and special, and that you have skills and gifts and wishes unlike anyone else on the planet. And I know that you have infinite potential, and that means that you have the ability to make even your wildest wishes come true. Now, since I know you so well, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Camilla Thompson, and I am the author of Skating Late. And I get to travel to classrooms and communities all over Canada sharing my stories. Being a children's author is a wild wish that I've had from the time I was tiny little. Since I was in grade 1, I've had this wishy little whisper in my mind that says you should write a book. When I was in grade 1, I had a teacher, and she asked my class to sit down and write a story for Valentine's Day. And all of my classmates sat down and started writing as if it was no trouble at all. But at that time, I had a learning difference, and that meant that I had a hard time reading and writing as quickly as my peers did. And so when they all sat down and wrote, I sat down and realized that all of the words and all of the ideas that I had in my head would not go down on paper. And that made me feel really bad and really different. And I was near tears when my teacher, who was one of those special teachers, she noticed that I was feeling upset. And so she came and sat down with me. And she said, Camilla, I know that you're having a hard time with your reading and writing, but there's another author who has the same kinds of troubles. Do you know who Robert Munsch is? And of course I knew who Robert Munsch was. Robert Munsch was and is one of my favorite authors. He wrote a story called Mortimer that I was crazy about when I was in grade 1. So yeah, I knew who Robert Munsch was. And she said Robert Munsch also has learning differences, and he has a hard time getting his thoughts on paper too. And so what Robert Munsch does is he tells his stories. He's very lucky. He used to get to work with kids all day long, and they would just chat and tell stories. And he had people who would help him take those wonderful stories that he told and turn them into books. And she said, Camilla, why don't you try that? Why don't you try telling me a story, and we'll see if we can turn it into something. And so I liked that idea. And so I said, I love you. I love you. I love you like nuts. If I had a frog, I'd give you the guts. And she kind of laughed, and then that made me want to carry on. And so I said, I love you. I love you. I love you some more. If I had an apple, I'd give you the core. And she laughed, and she said, Camilla, you are a storyteller, and I believe that one day your stories are going to turn into books. And so that's where that wishy little whisper started, and I started to dream that day of becoming a children's author. And so do you know what I did then? I forgot all about it for a very, very, very long time. It wasn't until about 15 years ago that that wishy whisper came back and reminded me that I wanted to write a children's book. And so that's what I did. I sat down and I wrote a story, and I loved it. I was really happy with my story. And I shared it with all of the kids in my life, and I shared it with all the grown-ups in my life, and everybody said, Camilla, this is a great story. You should get it illustrated. You should get it published. You should turn your story into a book. And so do you know what I did then? Absolutely nothing. I put that story on the shelf, and I spent 15 years telling myself that my story wasn't good enough to be a book, and that I wasn't good enough to write a book. And so that story stayed a wish for a very, very long time. I would wish and wish and wish. Every time I wrote a wish list, I would wish for my story to turn into a book. But by magic, it never, ever happened. It wasn't until a couple years ago when I started to do something a little bit different. I didn't want my story just to be a wish anymore. And so I took that wish and I mixed it with just a teeny tiny bit of work. It took only 2 months of working after 15 years of wishing, and then all of a sudden, my story turned into a book. And that taught me a very valuable lesson. I learned that when I took all of those wishes that I had on the shelf and I mixed just a little bit of work with them, I could make absolutely anything happen for myself. No matter how wild those wishes were, a little bit of work helped me make them come true. So some of the wild wishes I've had come true over the last couple of years, you wouldn't believe. I've had free cars and free trips and my dream dog and my dream house all just fall in my lap with just a tiny little bit of work. And so that has taught me that anything that comes to my mind is meant to be mixed with a little bit of work to make it happen. And so that's why a few months ago, when I started to have another little wishy whisper that told me that I was supposed to be something else, I decided I wasn't going to put that wish on the shelf. I still had all of those same voices that told me you can't do it and you're not good enough to do it and you shouldn't do it. But I had learned my lesson. I was going to take that wishy whisper, I was going to mix it with a little bit of work, and I was going to be the thing that I was supposed to be. And so that's what I did. And you will never, ever, ever guess what I am now. And that's not because you're a bad guesser. I bet you were a fantastic guesser. I've had some of the best guessers in the world try to guess what I am now, and they couldn't do it. I've had them guess that maybe you're an illustrator. And I love to draw, that's true, but I am not an illustrator because they will never guess what I am. And I've had people guess maybe you're a singer. And I love to sing, I really do, but that is not what I am now because you will never, ever, ever guess what I am now. And I've had people guess maybe you're a dancer, and that is true. I love to dance. I dance with some of the best of them, but that is not what I am now because they will never, ever, 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 ever guess what I am now. And that's because I made it up. There's nobody else in the world who does what I do. I completely made it up out of my imagination. So today, I am a wish worker. And a wish worker is someone who is really good at making wishes and really, really good at making those wishes come true. And really, really, really good at helping other people make wishes and really, 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 really good at helping other people make those wishes come true. So just like a construction worker builds buildings, I, as a wish worker, build wishes. And just like a construction worker has to wear things like a hard hat to do their job, I have to wear a bit of a uniform too. So this is part of my uniform. Can you see what this is? What are these? Turn around so you can see them well. What do I have on here? These are wings. Now, do you think that these wings are the kind of wings that I can just go to the window and I can flutter away? No, those wings don't work like this yet, but I truly believe that one day something is going to happen and I will be able to fly. Flying is a wild wish that I've had from the time I was tiny little, even earlier than grade 1. I have wished to fly. And people have always told me, that's impossible, you can't do it, you'll never be able to fly. But I have seen some incredibly impossible things come true. I was born before the internet. And so when I was little, I wished and wished and wished that I could watch whatever TV show I wanted to. I had 2 channels and all they played was the news. I had to watch the news almost all day, and so I spent almost all day wishing that I could watch my favorite show. Now, who gets to do that now? Pretty much anybody. Anyone can turn on YouTube or Netflix and watch their favorite shows. But to me, that was an impossible wish. So I believe that even my most impossible wishes one day will come true. Something will be invented, or somebody will make a potion. Who knows what'll happen? It might be you that comes up with that idea that's going to help me fly. And I hope you do. I hope you do it quick because it's something that I really, really hope I get to do soon. But in the meantime, until my wings work, and until you invent something, I work towards my wish of flying as much as I possibly can. Any opportunity that I have to work towards my wish of flying, I take it. So I told you that I like to work in some of the hottest places in the world and some of the coldest places in the world. And when I go to some of those cold places, I fly in one of these. Do you see what that is? This is a helicopter. And every chance I get to go in a helicopter, I take it because that makes me feel like I am working towards my wish of flying. And I also do stuff like this. I don't know if you can see this, but it is called a slingshot. And it is a really cool ride where you get pulled down and shot up 350 feet into the air. And it makes you feel like you are flying. I did it with my son and I felt like I was flying, I was smiling, and my son felt like it was a nightmare, and he said more bad words than I've ever heard in my life. He taught me a few bad words that I didn't even know existed. And then some other things I like to do. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Can you see what this is? This is a roller coaster, and it's not just a roller coaster, it is the best roller coaster in the world. It is the tallest, fastest, steepest roller coaster in the world, and when I rode that, I felt like I was flying. I loved it. Another thing I did to work towards my wish of flying was this. This was a really cool one. You can see that I'm wearing a parachute, and that parachute is attached to a string that's attached to a motorboat, and that motorboat is going so fast that I flew behind it like a kite, and it made me feel like I was flying. I loved it. Another thing I did just recently was this. It's zip lining. I got to zip line through the jungle, and I was given the peace sign and showing how happy I was to be up in the air. Now, my favorite thing I have ever done to work towards my wish of flying is this. Can you see what that is? It is a hot air balloon, and if you look around behind me, you might see a few other hot air balloons, because I have filled my life with hot air balloons. Long before I got to go in a hot air balloon, I wished to be in a hot air balloon. It was always a dream for me. Now, for some people, my dream is a nightmare. Now, you tell me what you think. Would you like to go in a wicker basket that is about this big and this big, just a little wicker basket, and have it attached to a balloon that is as big as a baseball field? When it's laying flat, it is as big as the infield of a baseball field. And would you like to fill that balloon up with hot air from a flame that is 1,000,000 times hotter than a barbecue? And that flame is right here, right over your head, just and it fills up that balloon with hot air, and up we float thousands of feet in the air, and there's no steering wheel. There's absolutely no way to steer it other than as the wind goes. And my hot air balloon pilot, before we went up in the air, he handed me a binder like this, and he said, you know, you could crash into the ocean, or you could crash into a power pole, or you could crash into a field. There's about 1,000,000 things that could go wrong. Do you want to do it? And I said, sign me up. I was so excited to do that, and I had the time of my life. Now, that was a dream come true for me, but who thinks that's a nightmare? A lot of people do. A lot of people do not like heights. They do not like flying. They prefer to be in things that have steering wheels. But for me, it was a wish, and that just shows me that what is a wish for me isn't for everyone. That wish is for me. So I like to use another example. My son had a wish that he wanted me to do with him. Have you ever wished to go scuba diving or go under the ocean on a sea walk? That's what my son wanted to do. He wanted to do a sea walk, and it's like this, where you wear a helmet. It's almost like a space helmet, and that space helmet allows you to go down under the sea, and you can walk around with all of the beautiful fish. And he thought it would be a great idea, and I said, yes, I would love to do that with you. And so I put on my helmet, and I went to the boat, and I walked off the boat and climbed down the ladder, and as soon as my head went under the water, I freaked. I freaked out harder than I have ever freaked out before in my life. It was the biggest freaking freak out you have ever seen. I panicked. I couldn't do it. I had to do the emergency signal and say, get me out of there. And I had to be rescued by scuba divers because his wish was my nightmare. And it just proves to me that we all have these unique and special wishes because we're all unique and special people. So the whispery wishes that you have speaking in your ear and in your mind, they are meant for you. And if you do a little bit of work, you can make even those wild, incredible, crazy wishes come true. And as a wish worker, it's my job to show you how. So when you come back, I'm going to show you how to find a wish, where to find a wish, how to make a wish, and then how to work to make that wish come true. So my nephew has a wish to be a YouTuber. And he told me to tell you to make sure that you like and subscribe and you hit the notification button so that you do not miss our next video when we will make a big wish together.